All right, cool. Steph, welcome to DAO Talk. Thank you so much for joining.
Hey, thanks for having me.
Yeah, absolutely. So maybe you can just get us started by talking a little bit about your background, who you are, how you got into working in crypto Web3 DAOs, and then what you're working on now.
Yeah. So I onboarded in the fall of 2021 at this point. And, my loving partner had been sort of like peppering me about Web3 for like, a year plus. And every time it would come up, I'd always be like, ooh, like Web3, what is this thing you're talking about? And, finally I was like, all right, this is something that clearly means a lot to you. And I come from the like brand and design and like content creation world. And so I could like see that this was an important thing to pay attention to, just like, technology and like network effects and all of this stuff are things that we just like, as brand people just think about all the time. So, I was like hearing these words kind of, pop up at the intersection of Web3. So I listened to the original A16Z episode on NFTs, and I actually listened to it twice. And within like a 12-hour time period, we have this whiteboard in our kitchen. And the first time I listened to it, I was just, driving or walking. And then the next time I listened to it, I wake up at anywhere between 4 and 5 a.m. I'm sort of like notorious for this. And I woke up, at my normal time, like 4 a.m., put the episode in, and then just like, that meme with Charlie from It's Always Sunny, where he's got like all of the pieces of paper and like there's like strings and he's like looks like a mad person. So that was like actual footage of me that morning, and like was like drawing all these lines to community tokens and what they were calling social tokens at the time, and DAOs, and was just blown away. I was like, this feels like the culmination of everything that I have been thinking about my whole adult life. And so I come from this brand background, design background, previously was running my own boutique branding studio, but then also have worked in, have worked in corporate, and then also was, had worked for, at the intersection of community organizing. So spent a lot of time in nonprofit, social impact orgs, think tanks. And so I spent a lot of time thinking about how people come together and coordinate around a shared set of principles or values, and realized that like I had attempted to instigate, a DAO before I knew what that was. Like, had attempted to bring people together around a shared idea and create a sense of ownership over pushing the outcomes of this idea forward. But obviously didn't have the tech stack to really incentivize a sense of ownership, so it didn't quite find its way to fruition. But yeah, so this idea of DAOs and community tokens was just instantly legible to me. And yeah, at the time, like CryptoPunks were kind of like on their way up. And so I was just like, I don't know, I'm just going to like join Twitter and like see what's up. And, previously I had kind of stayed away from Twitter for myself personally. I had run tons of brand Twitter accounts, but, I actually set up a Twitter account, called myself Crypto Honey, as like this play on like the CryptoPunk, and yeah, I'm like, I don't know, just like sort of found myself in the right place at the right time, talking to the right people, and, dropped into a couple discords, and then immediately was like, sort of recruited by John Silky. Shout out to John Silky, who previously was running ops at C Club. And he sort of like pulled me into the C Club ecosystem, started there part-time. And then now I'm, 6 months later? Now I'm the steward of the media team over at C Club.
That's amazing. I think we can all probably relate to like the galaxy brain moment where it's like, wait, this is like, a computer, but it's also money, but it's also culture, but it's also like this totally new way of working together. In some ways, like, that whole experience of kind of falling down the rabbit hole, I think is very special. And like, my experience with that is definitely something I won't ever forget. I'm just like, imagining you as in the It's Always Sunny scene is very funny.
It's very accurate. My partner came downstairs with the baby at like a normal time. It was like 6:30. And I was just like, oh my God, I have to talk to you about this. He's like, he was like, great, you finally onboarded. Welcome.
That's so funny. I love it. I also love that you're, I mean, by now an OG, but like relatively new or to the space. I've actually noticed that in Seed Club in general, like a lot of the Seed Club like founders and people in the network are like have deep experience in maybe some other area, but like some of them are OGs, some of them are like newer to the space, and I find that really refreshing. Like I love talking with really smart people who have expertise in some other area that are kind of like newer, but established in the Web3 ecosystem, because I feel like there's this potential for like kind of improvement when you're not like all the way sunk in to exactly how the way things are done, that I think is really important.
Totally. Kristen Stone, she's a collaborator of Seed Club, and she once described the Seed Club team as weathered. And it just feels so accurate because, we're a little bit of an older team. And I say older, like I'm 33, but, I work with a lot of folks who are, anywhere from like 3 to 10 years younger than I am. And there's so much beauty and value in that, younger mentor. Like I love learning from folks who, are just like a little bit, fresher faced to the world. And there's so much value there. And also I love being a part of a team where like most of us are parents, most of us have kids, most of us have stood up and failed businesses in the past. Many of us are previous entrepreneurs. You really can't replace that learning, that like life learning. And then, to your point too, all of us in the team, we have this deep conviction, deep experience for the specific work streams that we're pushing forward. And that sense of trust in your team to just like, oh yeah, you got that. You like, that's where your conviction lies. That's your expertise. You've got that. Like, I'm so stoked to learn from you about that. So your observation resonates so deeply.
Yeah, I'm 31 and I feel weathered also. Weathered, such a good word. I think 30s is like you're a boomer in crypto. Do you have boomer tokens? Do you know about the boomer tokens?
I know about the boomer tokens. I don't have boomer tokens, although I do have On running shoes. I almost bought Allbirds a long time ago, but I've thankfully missed that wave. And I did send someone a Harry Potter gift recently and realized that like, oh, maybe this is not the way right now. I've never felt so instantly aged like than the moment that I sent the Sorting Hat gift to a group chat of like mostly Gen Zs.
You're like, oh no.
I know. It's just like crickets.
They're like, so should we kick her out or should we just let this one go?
Exactly. Yeah. Let this one slide, please.
That's awesome. Well, that's really cool. So one thing I've noticed, just following you on Twitter, in your role at Seed Club, you kind of have this vision of kind of media, and kind of that intersection of DAOs and tokenized communities and media, kind of like what marketing can potentially mean in Web3. This is something I really resonate with as well. So would love to hear you expand on that a little bit. What do you envision as the potential for media in Web3, and how are you approaching that at Seed Club?
Yeah. So, I mean, first thing I'll say right off the bat, like we're just getting started with media at Seed Club. And I feel so excited for just like the like really big thinking that we're doing over there, and really excited to see it all play out and sort of manifest in the next year. But yeah, the way that I think about media in Web3 is, previously in Web2, you had, like content marketing, you had your branding, you had PR, you had advertising, and they're all sort of related, but a lot of the times they were outsourced or contracted. And it was basically people coming in and sort of like shaping stories for an organization to then, or a product or whatever it is, to then ultimately like sell something to an end user. And, that coming from that world, like it's a pretty incredible design space. Like just to say that, like to execute on that kind of brief and have, such immediate ROI on the thing that you're working on. And now in Web3, especially at the intersection of DAOs and community tokens and tokenized communities, you're your end goal is to expand your network. It's to find your people and to show those people, one, that they belong in the network, and then also show them what they can do once they're there. And so it's a little bit of a twist on like traditional marketing or advertising, where it actually, in my opinion, doesn't make sense to get like an outside marketing firm to come in and like run some content marketing for my DAO, right? But we can think about the role of media as sort of supplanting what would previously have been something that you might have outsourced to an agency in Web 2. So at C Club, we're thinking about media as something that encompasses your brand, your social and your publicity, your editorial, your productions. And within that, you'll notice like how dynamic the media strategy is, right? Like it's no longer like, oh, you just stand up a newsletter, you stand up social. It's like, no, actually now you have to have an audio component, you have to have a visual component, you have to have a written component, and also a video component. And there has to be a sense of like clear alignment across all those things. And so that's how we're thinking about media at C Club. And then sort of like adjacent to that, media has the opportunity to play this role of like community storytelling, to like tell the stories that are like emerging within the community. So whoever is on your media team has to like play this little bit of a beat reporter type role, where you have to like be in all the places and kind of just like witness and like surface the stories that are trying to emerge, and then figure out a way to tell them via all of these like dynamic channels. So your editorial, your productions, your audio productions, your video productions, your visual expression, your social expression, and all of that basically comes down to community building and relationship building as manifested through your media strategy. So yeah, I could really go off, but that's like sort of the baseline where I start.
Hell yeah. I would love to hear you go off, on that topic anytime. I think, so like, it's funny because I've thought about this topic a lot as well. And maybe use like some different words, but I think there's like a ton of overlap in the thinking. One distinction that I've learned to make, coming from more of a Web 2 kind of like growth marketing type background, I did that for about a decade, is like, you kind of use the example of like, maybe you like airdrop in an agency to like create content and get your name out there. And maybe that's not the right sort of approach, like community native, crypto native approach. Also like in my past roles at Web 2, it's kind of like the marketing was almost disconnected from the product in a way. It was like, this kind of distribution thing we did. And I think there's an opportunity like at Tally for us to really think about marketing as a product unto itself, right? It's like kind of part of the value that we're bringing to the table as Tally. Like our core, focus is on creating software to make DAOing easier. But I think what we're doing from like a marketing perspective, really around education, is actually part of that mission, right? And so
that's right.
And then like we're trying to take what we're doing with marketing and like DAOify it and do that on Tally. And so it's like creating this feedback loop. I've been using our product a lot, and our engineers are like, okay, you can stop using product now. Like this is like the like 10th feature request you've made in the last 2 hours. But anyway, I just think there's like, this opportunity to take a much more integrated approach with like product, or like the like media and marketing and like everything else kind of that your community and your organization is doing in the Web3 space.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think what you're speaking to is this something that we're talking about a lot more at Media at C Club, is the blurring of the lines between like what would previously be like a passive user or passive reader and the like builder and creator, right? And so yes, we are creating content, or we are producing media for like, let's use the word user as an example. So like a tweet, our newsletter verticals, our podcast, like they're all being like consumed and engaged with by a user. But the idea is that then we're going to bring them into the network, and then they're going to come in and become part of that creator network, right? And become part of the value creation within the network. And then, and so that like speaks to this like blurring of the lines, which I think is really critical within Web3. And that's of course all enabled by tokens.
Yeah, blurring of the lines is a great way to put it. It's like blurring of the lines between community, right? It's like someone could be like creating content with C Club. They could be a member of a C Club project. They could be a contributor to multiple like C Club DAOs or communities. For a Tally, like you could be, a content contributor. You could be part of a DAO that uses Tally. There's so many different, like there's like a one-to-many relationship between everything. Whereas like, at least, in my past world in Web2, it's kind of like you're either like an employee of the company or you're not. You're either a customer or not, right? And there's all these like very hard lines, whereas there's this much more like pluralistic approach, which I personally find like very exciting, in the Web3 space.
Yeah, it's 100% exciting. And it also like leads to complications and challenges. And, that blurring that, if you think about Web2, there's like real clarity and legibility within a hierarchy, right? This person's in charge. This person makes a decision. They sign off. They ship the thing, the end. It's consumed. It's purchased by this type of person. Like your archetypes are very clear. In Web3, again, if we're talking about this like blurring of the lines, it's way more opaque. It's like there's like less clarity, and so I think you've probably seen this, but there's just like a consistent call across the space for more structure and more clear leadership, and so while I think that 100% is the most exciting design space in Web3, it also is the most challenging, and we're all sort of fumbling through this. Like, how do you set guardrails? How do you set voice? How do you maintain editorial integrity while also inviting people to kind of like move up the creation stack, right? Where you have distribution, you have curation, you have creation. And I think I wrote a piece about this, how it's like sort of this decentralized media stack with distribution at the bottom, curation in the center, and creation at the top. And to me, I think that there's like a real case to be made for sort of keeping your creation a little bit more centralized at first, while you're really establishing those guardrails and that brand voice and that narrative, and really relying on your community members to support in the distribution. Also, curation is a place where there's a little bit more blurring. But that's like how, progressive decentralization can show up within Web3 media. So, having that creation piece sort of be a little bit protected at first, and then have the decentralization sort of move up the stack. It's the blurring is fabulous, incredible design space, and it's also really challenging to navigate.
Oh man, Steph, I could talk to you about this all day.
Let's do it. Let's find the time.
Yeah, we'll have part two. But yes. I know you have, you're a very busy person and you have more stuff to do today. So, it's cool with you. I'll transition into some closing questions. The first of which is actually a two-part question, so kind of cheating. But the first part is, what is your favorite part of working in, Web3, DAOs, crypto? And then the second part is, what's your least favorite part, or something you think we need to work on as a community going forward? So
I definitely am going to like lean on the observation I was making just now. It totally feels alive for me. The most exciting part in Web3 is the opportunity to take an idea, to have ownership over it, and then to drive it forward. The design space is currently unlimited, and like we really can't even see, we can like barely see the edges of the design space as we're building it. And then as we find those edges, like a whole nother thing sort of unravels. A little bit like parenting, actually. You think you've got one thing covered, and then 2 days later, it's like all of a sudden you're dealing with a new set of issues. But so that's what makes it so exciting. And then the thing that, again, it's like the other side of that is this challenge of like, we need, we actually need more generative leadership and more clearer guardrails, and also a much clearer articulation of vision and strategy. Which is another thing I've just been like kind of beating a drum around at C Club, and then also just generally that the strategy component is really where I see the most opportunity for people to set up meaningful guardrails and to really show up within their leadership within the DAO.
Love that. One of the things that I say a lot is I think DAOs actually require more leadership rather than less, because you don't have these sort of like shortcuts of this person has this title or reports to that person, this person's a customer, this person's a supplier. You don't have those, which actually requires the individuals who are in the mix to really step up even further, to help people to create selling points and help people coalesce and, align around why they're there. So totally hear you on that.
Yeah. I mean, Jess had this tweet a while ago that like, we don't need leaderless. We need leaderful DAOs. And I think about that all the time. And the way it shows up for me personally is like, you have to, each of your relationships that you have in the space and also within your organization, they like evolve and shift depending on the specific contents that you're working within. Right. So, and that just takes a lot of effort. It takes a lot of awareness that, at one point your relationship might be this, but then as you move into this initiative or this role or this project, that relationship shifts. And so how are you showing up in support of that relationship in order to move outputs forward? So that's like exhausting in and of itself. Just like, all of these relationships we have to manage in order to engage in this like decentralized way of working.
For sure. That'll be part 3. Sounds like we have a ton to talk about there too. Thanks so much for everything you've shared so far. I just have one more question. It's our usual closing question, which is, what is your favorite place in the world and why?
So my favorite place in the world is a place where I can find this place pretty much anywhere. It looks like a coffee shop or a restaurant, or just like a place where I can be in physical space with other people and not necessarily interacting with them, in real time, but just a place where I can sort of feel like I'm connected to the textures of life. But also have a sense of like, oh yeah, this is my like little moment. This is my little space. It's very hard to find that as a parent, and then also in the pandemic, with, if I have a small house and whatever, just all of that stuff. So yeah, I love that space, and it's true. You can really find it anywhere.
Like a public place, but with the right vibes is your favorite place. That's awesome. Yes. That's a very like unique answer. Most people are like, I really like Paris, which is also acceptable, but
totally. Yeah. Right.
But I love it. That's really cool. And definitely hear you on that too. Well, Steph, thanks so much for coming on DAO Talk. Looking forward to continuing the conversation with you about DAOs and media and leadership going forward. So it's great to have you on.
Yeah, thanks for having me. Let's do it again.
Heck yeah.